Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday here in Australia and it is 11 a.m. Queensland time. Actually, I am coming to you a little bit late. I do apologise for those of you who may be based in different parts of the world. We did daylight saving cut over last night and I sort of forgot about that when I was scheduling this into my calendar. So for those of you who are based in New South Wales or Victoria or other parts of Australia in the world, I know 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time from this morning was an hour ago. So I do apologise that for the difference in time and for me coming on a little bit later, but I'm based up here in Brisbane in Queensland and it is 11 a.m. For me up here, and hence why I'm coming on at this particular time. So for those of you who were waiting for me an hour ago, I'm sorry. I am here now. Hopefully you're able to catch this on the replay. Alrighty, so first and foremost, I want to kind of welcome all of the newbies to this group. Again, each time I come in and do these trainings, each week I'm seeing more and more people trickling in, of their own accord, or perhaps, some of you already in this group have actually invited your, other friends or other co-workers to come into this group, which is absolutely wonderful. I do want to just make mention though that I've got about over 100 pending requests to join this group, and the reason why you're wondering why haven't, your friends or that you invited to this group, why haven't they come into the group yet, is because they actually haven't answered the questions. I do have a few pre-qualifying questions that I put forward for people before they actually join the group, because I want to make sure that those that are actually joining this group. Oh, hi Costas, greetings all the way over there in Greece. I want to make sure that everyone that is a part of this group wants to be in here. I know that you are inviting your friends and your co-workers, but I just want them to make sure that they want to be here as well. It will just make the group, I think, much more valuable to everyone, so that those that want to be here are going to contribute and so forth. So if you've invited your friends and you're wondering where they are and they're not in the group, just give them a gentle nudge to say if they can just answer the questions if they want to be a part of the group, because I will actually be purging those names in a couple of weeks. As I said, I've got about 100 people that are just sort of sitting in limbo there. The other thing that I guess just wanted to first and foremost mention is that Costas has said, what? Gimming Professor. Oh, good morning, Professor. Oh, Professor. Oh, definitely not a professor, Costas. No, definitely not a professor. But thank you for joining me and for the little flower there. That's very sweet. So today I'm going to talk about an all-important topic of processed foods. And I know I'm not going to be very popular for this training. It's a bit of a contentious topic because, processed foods can become a shift worker's best friend, so to speak, when we're obviously feeling so tired, we're too tired to cook and so forth. So we do, become reliant on processed foods. But having a few conversations with clients this week, it's really just made me realise that I do need to talk about this topic and come at it from a different angle, which I'll get into in a second. First and foremost though, I'm going to put a disclaimer out that this training that I do and that I come on here is purely for general education only. It's not designed to be prescriptive advice. I'm just coming in here every now and then to just share a little bit of knowledge for you, because I'm all about education and preventative medicine. I think we need to break this cycle of shift workers being unwell all the time. And working in a clinical practice over the years, I've had many come to me and they're not well and they've developed all of these chronic health conditions. And I look a lot of it from the point of view as a lot of it has become from lack of education. They were never, given the knowledge of how to take care of their health whilst working 24/7, which is, why I do or what I do from an education perspective. For those of you who are joining me live, if you can please type in 1 that are catching me here on the live. It just kind of helps me to know who's watching when from a time zone perspective. If you do end up catching me on the replay, just type in 2. Please don't be shy. I know some of you just want to sit here and watch and not really interact, and I get that, and that's fine too. But I'm fairly harmless. I'm just here to kind of help you. So if you're live, type in 1, and if you're catching me in the replay, type in 2. Alrighty, so let us get into the topic of processed foods. For those of you who have never seen me do these trainings before, I've done quite a few over the weeks. I do refer to my notes because my memory is not that wonderful, and I want to make sure that I share the information for you in a way that is the most impactful for you. Now, I wanted to, I guess, talk about this subject. As I said, I'm all about education, because usually when we know more, we do more. Like, the more knowledge we have, the more, oh hi Bill, thanks for joining me. Usually the more we know, we're more likely to make better choices and decisions moving forward. Hence, why I like to do this education. In saying that though, a little bit of a clause, I think most of us know, let's be, I guess, getting back to foundations here. Most of us know we should be eating better and exercising more. Like, we kind of know that, don't we? It's not rocket science. It's not something new. But why, knowing that, why do you do what you do, and why do you make the choices that you make, knowing that you do need to eat better and you do need to exercise and so forth? And that's really a question that you can only really ponder yourself and have a think about, because there's so many reasons behind that, why people do the things that they do, knowing what they know. But I just want you to sort of sit and ponder on that. And I guess, again, why I want to talk about this topic today on processed foods, because it's so important. We know that we shouldn't be eating this stuff, but we continually do. And I want to tell you why it's not great. It's not great if you don't work shift work, but it's even more critical that you really reduce your consumption of these foods when you work shift work, for so many other different reasons. Now, in saying that, from today's point of view, we know that, again, we know processed foods can lead us to weight gain, right? Like, and that's usually why people will go on to certain diets and try not to eat the processed foods and everything. It's all about weight, wanting to lose weight. Yes, that is definitely applicable, but it is not the only thing. Absolutely, it's not the only the reason why you shouldn't be eating so much processed foods. And the three things I want to talk about today is because how it can impact on our mental health. This is processed foods, how eating too much processed foods can impact on our mental health, our gut health, and our sleep. And the research is all there as to shift workers are prone to a lot of, chronic health conditions, and some of them of which include, mental health disorders, the anxiety and the depression, gut dysfunction, I suppose, for a better word, is hugely prevalent in the research. But I probably don't need to tell you the research. You've experienced it yourself. Things like constipation, diarrhea, pain, all these types of gut dysfunction. And then sleep. Processed foods seriously can impact on our ability to sleep and sleep well. And for shift workers, that is not a good thing either. So I'm going to come at it from those three things: our mental health, our gut health, and how it can impact on our sleep. Before I do that, I want to, I guess, point out the difference between eating whole, real foods, okay, foods that don't come with the ingredients label. They've been designed by Mother Nature. Little human intervention, I suppose, is another way of looking at it. But I want to kind of talk about eating those whole, real foods and their nutrients versus the processed foods, which have very little nutrient value. So, and the reason why I want to talk about that this again is because there is so much focus in the health and well-being and nutritional space all about proteins, fats, and carbs. And but the thing is, and that is all important, but it's not the be-all and end-all when it comes to our health. It's not all about those macronutrients. The fats and the proteins and the carbs, yes, they are important, and obviously the carbohydrates, as I'm going to talk about in a second, do form a part of that. But when it comes to our health and well-being, I just think we become so focused on that, and also calorie counting, and that alone can add even more stress and anxiety for some people, and it really is just not all about that. What I wanted to really discuss is that how the micronutrients, so fats, proteins, and carbohydrates are what we refer as macronutrients. So the three big ones that we do need to be including in our diet. But the things that we don't talk about, or not as much, in the health and well-being space is the micronutrients. And these are the absolute essential nutrients that pretty well much keep us alive. And they are absolutely imperative to our health and well-being, and they include things like our vitamins and minerals. So, for example, some of the fat soluble vitamins, your vitamin A, D, E and K. And then we've got the water soluble vitamins, so our B vitamins and vitamin C, along with the micronutrients, so the macro minerals, so things like calcium, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus, sodium, all of these types of minerals, along with our micro minerals. So it kind of gets broken down again into things like micro minerals are also referred to as trace minerals. You might have heard that term before, but they include things like your iron, your copper, your zinc, your selenium and magnesium. All of these are so critically important in so many biochemical processes that happen in our body every single second, pretty much, every kind of minute of every day. They basically help to keep us alive. And the thing is that whole real foods contain all of those vitamins and minerals, but your processed foods don't. They're pretty non-existent. So why having more whole real foods designed from Mother Nature is so important to be having more of instead of your processed food. So if your diet is predominantly of highly refined and processed foods, and I know that it is for shift workers, I know that it is for non-shift workers too, a standard American diet or standard Australian diet, or I like to refer it as a standard shift workers diet, is a highly refined and processed food diet. But not only is it going to lead to weight gain, inflammation, things like diabetes, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, all that type of stuff, but it can impact on your mental health, your gut health, and also your sleep. Because your body is not getting the nourishment in the form of the nutrients from these whole real foods. So they help with energy production as well, like shift workers. Energy is something that we always, desperately in search of. So if you're having more processed foods, you're not going to be getting those, minerals and vitamins to help with the energy. It's so critical for immune function. Like our whole gut is actually it's where our immune system lies, but it needs all those essential minerals and so forth to help with our immune system. And I talk about that a lot in my book for those of you who have purchased it and bought it, because immune dysfunction or a poor immune system is quite common amongst shift workers for many different reasons. The minerals and vitamins are also essential to bone health, to fluid balance, for our nervous system. So that means, our mood and our sleep as well. They're just so incredibly important for us. But the thing is that we must obtain these micronutrients predominantly from the food that we eat, as I alluded to before. Mostly from the food that we eat, because they are essential nutrients that we can only get from eating, ideally, whole real foods. They are also predominantly, and I say the word predominantly, anti-inflammatory, because we're all different. Not all foods kind of agree with everyone as a whole, but predominantly they are foods that aren't going to create an inflammatory response in our body. And a lot of more and more research is actually showing that a lot of chronic health conditions that we are seeing today comes back to inflammation. And so you don't want to have a diet that is high in inflammatory foods, which leads me to the processed foods. Okay, you guys know what the processed foods are. It's the stuff that you're buying from, the takeaways, the Uber Eats, whatever takeaway other options that you refer to. We're talking about the donuts, the pizzas, the burgers, the fries, the cheesecakes. I love that somebody just wrote in saying that they find it hard to resist the temptation of the cheesecake that actually sits in the lunchroom. People, very kind-hearted people, they bring in these, foods to kind of make night shift better, and I get it. And then they find it hard to kind of resist it, and I get it, it's hard to resist, but is that the kind of food that's going to nourish your body? That's the question that you kind of need to ask. And if it is, maybe not a homemade cheesecake, which a lot of them aren't, that it is probably not going to nourish you on a cellular level, which we know is important. So with the processed foods, mainly they are very, contain very inflammatory products in them, so a lot of trans fats and high in omega-6 fatty acids, which have an inflammatory response on the body. They are pretty much most of them devoid of nutrition. Okay, so they're not going to provide you with any nourishment that is going to help you to stay well and to be able to function in a capacity that we know working shift work is hard enough as it is. So very inflammatory processed foods are very inflammatory. They're pretty much devoid of nutrition, so they're not really providing you with any nutrition on a cellular level. They're also often high in added and artificial sugars, okay, which is not great. That's the whole, if we're eating too much of it, can actually lead to eventually insulin resistance and prediabetes and type 2 diabetes over the long term. But not only that, is that they've actually shown that a lot of sugars can actually have a negative impact on our gut. So that gut health, again, everything kind of comes back to that gut, which is where our immune system lies, and also produces a lot of sleep kind of regulating hormones, which I'll talk about in a second. So having too much sugar is not only not great for the waistline, but it can actually be quite deleterious to the gut lining as well. Which also leads me to say that not only the sugars, but it's the emulsifiers that are also found in a lot of processed foods have been shown to actually strip the lining, that delicate lining, which is actually only a very one thin layer but that protects you from the outside world. It actually strips that gut lining. So it's kind of can impact on your immune system. It if anything that can get past the gut lining and into the bloodstream, which is from a condition known as leaky gut or intestinal permeability, which is not uncommon. The sleep deprivation alone can make you prone to things like that. But if you are adding more fuel to the fire in the form of highly refined and processed foods, your sugars, your anti-inflammatory foods, it's just going to make things kind of worse. So where does this all lead into the mental health and the gut health kind of perspective? Well, as I kind of mentioned at the beginning, I wanted to talk about the mental health, gut health and sleep, because these are three really big things that shift workers kind of struggle with. So there is very much a strong link between nutrition and gut health. It's fairly early. I find this crazy, but it's fairly early in the research if we're talking about clinical trials and so forth. But I think here we come back with a bit of common sense approach here as well, needs to be taken into account. But I'm a clinically trained nutrition. I do have to share and talk about the evidence-based stuff because it's a part of what I do. But this, studies have definitely shown that those that are not having an optimal diet struggle with mental health disorders more than those that eat a whole food diet. Also, studies have shown that those who suffer from things like anxiety and depression tend to have unhealthy eating patterns. Okay, so this is the stuff that you have control over to help with your mental well-being, to help with your gut health, is what you're actually putting food-wise into your body. And a lot of that comes back to that sort of mental health and the gut health comes back to our gastrointestinal tract or our gut needing more plant-based foods, okay, because plant-based foods in the form of whole foods contain fiber, and our gut or our gastrointestinal tract needs fiber to for food, basically for the microbiome that's in our gut. So the microbiome, I know I'm getting a little bit technical here, I'm sorry, but I know I've got an assortment of people that come into this group. Some have got science backgrounds, some don't, so I'll try and keep it as fairly simply as I can. But our gut is basically comprised of millions and trillions of microscopic gut bugs and bacteria in all different forms, and they play an essential role in the manufacture of certain vitamins and hormones and neurotransmitters that have a big impact on our mental health and well-being. This gut bacteria play a role in our health because the bacteria break down, so all that bacteria break down that plant-based fiber from your gut and actually, as I said, convert it into different types of hormones and neurotransmitters that can help with our health and well-being. The bacteria in our gut break down that fibrous food that our human enzymes can't, okay? So by the time it gets to that that large intestine, all these sort of plant-based foods that haven't been able to digest, that's where the gut bacteria come in and ferment it basically and break it down, and then it convert it into different types of things like butyrated short-chain fatty acids and so forth. So fiber, though, is only really found in plant-based foods. Okay, so there's little fiber in your processed foods. You know, you look at your cardboard wheat Bix. Can I just say, I'll use that as an example. Your box of wheat Bix in the morning, and they might on the outside, this is actually breakfast foods are a great example of that. If you're looking at a breakfast cereal box and it's, you know, pleading all these wonderful things that it's, you know, high in folate or iron or fiber, all that kind of stuff, probably the cardboard box itself has the most fiber, to be honest. They're not usually high in fiber, because we get fiber from plant-based foods. It's the actual non-digestible part of plant-based foods. So things like vegetables, fruit, whole grains. So whole grains, not the stuff that's highly refined, you know, your white stuff, your white flours, your white breads, your white rice, that's highly refined. You want to be eating more whole grains in their whole state. Legumes, nuts and seeds, all of these types of foods are absolutely essential for a gut microbiome, which is going to have an impact on our mental health and well-being. It comes down to also having a different array of plant-based foods as well, plant foods, because again, this is one thing that I've been guilty of over the years, and you know, we're all still guilty of it. We tend to kind of eat the same things over and over again, don't we? We eat just from convenience, because we know how to cook something. We tend to eat a lot of the same things, but that can actually deplete our gut microbiome as well of essential gut bacteria, because we need that diversity of all these different types of gut bugs to kind of help to break the different foods down and to convert them into different neurotransmitters and hormones. The gut microbiome, to break it down, as I said, into a process called fermentation, which produce many metabolites, which are super important for our immune system, our metabolism as well. I'm not really talk too much about that, but the state of our gut microbiome actually can impact on our ability to be able to lose weight or not. And that has been shown in the different types of gut bugs. You know, those that are overweight can actually have a predominant or too much of this bad bacteria that can affect the metabolism. So that's something to think about as well. But it's also important for our brain health, as I mentioned before, when it comes to our mental health, because 70% of our what's referred to as our happy hormone, you might have heard that before, but 70% of our happy hormone called serotonin is actually manufactured in the gut. Now that's huge. So we're talking about our mental health and well-being. Is a lot of it has to do with what's going on in our gut. And if we're having a lot of highly refined and processed foods that does not have any of these nutrients that I was talking about before, you know, all your vitamins and minerals, and no fiber, then it's absolutely going to have an impact on our mental health and well-being. So the biggest thing that can affect our gut microbiota obviously is our diet. Those gut bugs, and again, I did mention this a little bit in my book, that if the gut bugs are starving because you haven't been giving it any food, like I'm talking real food here, not the hamburgers and the chips and the fries and everything. Like your gut bugs are not going to get that. Like they're not going to get any nourishment from that. But if they're actually starving, they can't do what they're supposed to do. By manufacturing all of these important things, like that can help, even also to help with reducing inflammation, which is another important thing. Even polyphenols in the research have also shown, which are found in colourful fruits and vegetables. So again, sitting down to a plate of very colourful, diverse variety of fruits and vegetables is important, because it contains polyphenols, which also have shown to help with the health of our gut and our brain health and so forth. Healthy fats are also important for brain function, so making sure that you've got plenty of fatty fish, your omega-3 fatty acids, and things that can be found like in olive oil and avocados and all that kind of stuff. Is the healthy fats is really important as well for our brain function. So that has to do with mental health and gut health. So I just wanted to talk about that and how incredibly important, if you are having problems with your mood, and we all do when we work shift work. Let's just put it out there, and it's very multifactorial, the reasons behind it. But I want to highlight how the food that you eat can actually potentially be impacting on how you're feeling mentally as well, and also with what's going on in your gut. The third thing I wanted to talk about is sleep, because sleep is, a real challenge, of course, when we work shift work because of our crazy rosters. Some of us have got some quick turnarounds. Oh, hi, Jonathan. Sorry, I did see you join me before. Thanks for joining me. We know with sleep, it can be very disrupted depending on, the tight shifts, the turnarounds, the late earlies, all these different types of factors that can actually come into play. But have you really thought about, again, when we think about processed foods, a lot of us are more concerned about it from a weight kind of perspective, but have you really sat down and thought about how, if your diet is predominantly highly refined and processed foods, that actually can be impacting our sleep? Because it's not all about just taking a certain type of food or drink or supplement just before we go to sleep. It's what you're eating throughout the whole day leading up to the time that you go to sleep that can impact on your sleep. And the reason for it is because our sleep regulating hormone called melatonin it gets manufactured. Would you believe there is 400 times more melatonin found in our gut? Okay, so this is a hormone that has to do with our sleep. 400 times more melatonin is found in our gut than it is in our pineal gland, in our brain. There's research study identifying that, which is pretty huge, which again comes back to the important thing why we need to be nurturing our gut, because it can impact on our ability to sleep. But not only does melatonin come about from the manufacture of protein, which gets then broken down into an amino acid called tryptophan, it then gets broken down into serotonin, which, by the way, we need to make sure we've got plenty of stomach acid for all of this to kind of happen. That's another topic alone. So the protein, amino acids, tryptophan, converted to serotonin, and then eventually melatonin, like it says there is literally this biochemical sleep process. In order for that to actually happen, for melatonin to finally become manufactured, which is so important for sleep, right? It requires all of these cofactors in this biochemical pathway. Cofactors is just another name that we refer to in the nutritional world as our vitamins and minerals. So getting back to what I spoke about right at the very beginning, certain vitamins and minerals can help with our sleep. They're essential in order for our sleep to happen. So things like calcium, zinc, B vitamins, magnesium, just to name a few. If your diet is predominantly processed foods, it's going to be devoid of all of these important nutrients, cofactors, vitamins, minerals, whatever you want to call them. If it's not getting any nourishment from the food, it's not going to be able to produce, melatonin, so which is going to impact on your ability to sleep. So I hope that just kind of all makes sense, and it just kind of all kind of comes together, the importance of why we need to be, because we know we should be eating better. Okay, we all know we should be eating better, sleeping more, of course, exercising more, less processed foods. But a lot of us, we're kind of sticking our head in the sand, and we're not actually doing anything about it. And again, I know that there's a lot of reasons for it. I know so many of us have, such busy lives these days. We've got so many commitments. But I kind of just put my hand on my heart here and say to you that you have to find a way to cut out, or at least reduce, the processed foods that you're eating and replace them with more whole foods, as I said, more salads, vegetables, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, stuff that Mother Nature designed for us, because it's so easy for shift workers to become unwell because of the diet and a lot of other things, and we have to find a way to get that meal prep in order. We've got to find a way to start making more food from our home, from those whole-based foods, as opposed to becoming too reliant on these processed foods. Because and I do have an 80-20 rule. I'm not saying to never eat it again. I'm sure you'd be wanting to throw things at me if I even suggested that. I'm a realist, and and I every now and then will have some processed food or whatever too. Not often, but I still do, because it kind of is. It is what it is. But I focus mainly on a good whole food diet because I know that I know that I need it from a nourishment kind of point of view. So please just, keep that in the back of your mind when we, as we approach the end of the year and going into the new year. No doubt there is going to be more. The next diet, the latest diet, lose weight for the new year, all that's going to come out again. And my thing that I want you to consider is that the next diet is that diet's usually a short-term thing, and it usually means you're going to deprive yourself of something. So let's get back to the basics of incorporating more of the whole foods into our diet, not become too obsessed about restricting yourself from certain things. It will make you so much happier as well, and less anxious as well. So so the big takeaway that I want to leave with you is that if your diet is predominantly made of highly processed foods, it is not going to be receiving those really important micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals that are pretty much designed to keep us alive. Okay. They also play a role in our mental health, our gut health, and our ability to relax and stay asleep. So it's not all about proteins, carbs, and fats. It's all about getting more, although the carbohydrates, of course, form part of the fruits and vegetables. That's the complex carbohydrates. But please don't get onto that bandwagon, because we just hear so much about it in the media and all the latest diets that come out there. And I guess on a side note, I did want to mention this, and this is just my personal opinion. However, I do worry a lot about all these diets that come out there, the low carb diets, the high fat diets. We hear low carb, high carb, keto diets, all that kind of thing. In the short term, they have been shown to be very beneficial at things like lowering our blood sugar, with weight loss, and even with cognition, with brain being able to sort of think straight. It has been shown that they are, the research has been shown, and I'm sure maybe even people watching this video now have perhaps gone on some of those diets, but they're not designed for the long term. Because we don't want to be eliminating stuff except for the processed foods. We don't really want to be eliminating, certain proteins and certain complex carbohydrates and healthy fats. Our body needs it to be able to function, and along with those vitamins and minerals as well. And FODMAPs is another one that I hear often as well. Again, it can be a great approach to identify which foods may be causing you gut discomfort, people who are suffering with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. However, FODMAP foods, okay, the FODMAP foods that they've identified as is what they're kind of eliminating for temporarily. A lot of those FODMAPs foods are the primary source of the fermentation process that is necessary in our guts to produce all of those, as I said, the hormones and neurotransmitters and so forth. So they're some of the best sources for a healthy gut microbiome. A lot of our gut struggles, or a lot of our reasons for our gut struggles, can be very multifactorial. The sleep disruption doesn't help, anxiety and stress and so forth. But a lot of our gut problems these days in Western society today comes about from having insufficient fiber in our diet, because we haven't been giving them the real foods to be able to give them to the gut bugs as foods, as their food, to be able to do the functions that they're designed to do. So they will struggle to digest certain plant-based foods because the gut bugs aren't there. They've pretty much died out from having such a low fiber diet. So, it's quite a very complicated kind of process when you think about it. But I guess I like to take a step back here and why are people suffering from IBS? And again, the FODMAP thing can be great, it can be beneficial, but it really should be only for the short term, because you can potentially be starving your gut bacteria of essential foods that it needs to ferment to do its thing. So again, and I know that, so when you're on these FODMAPs, maybe gradually introducing, foods one at a time in conjunction with probiotics and so forth can help. but also ask yourself, why else might you be experiencing, IBS symptoms? Is it because of, the stress and anxiety that you might have going on? Is it because you're not eating you're eating at all different times, that's not helping as well? So I just wanted to kind of leave that on you. And again, this is just my personal opinion, just taking a step back at things, seeing a big picture, because I think it's when we kind of narrow things down to, instead of really looking at a person as a whole, taking that whole holistic approach, what's going on in their whole life, the stresses that they've got going on, as well as the job itself. It's not usually just down to one kind of thing. So my big takeaway, I'm going to wrap this up shortly, but I do appreciate those of you who have hung on to watch today. My big takeaway is that we really, 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 really need to, as shift workers, to be limiting our consumption of the ultra processed foods. It is not doing you any favors at all. Not only from a weight loss perspective that we all kind of know, it's not rocket science, but it can impact on your mental well-being, it can impact on your gut health, and hugely, it can impact on your ability to be able to sleep and sleep well. And we know that that's, for shift workers, sleep is just what we need kind of the most and foremost. So, sitting down and having a plate that's kind of half vegetables and salads, so colours, as I mentioned before about the polyphenols, which is contained in a lot of fruits and vegetables that are high in a lot of colour and antioxidants. So if your plate's kind of half full of lots of fruits and vegetables, then the other half can be some whole grains and some proteins, and then with a bit of healthy fats as well. Put some olive oil over whatever you're eating and some avocados. Like it needs to be this cross section, but making sure that you're having plenty of that plant-based foods, because the plant-based foods is where you're going to find all those really important, micronutrients that I mentioned, and vitamins and minerals that I mentioned before. Your vitamins A, D, E, and K, your water-based vitamins B's and C's, and it just comes in the food that we eat. And it's really easily to fall down the trap of just wanting to take a supplement. But if you're taking a supplement and not changing your diet, your health is not going to improve, because everything comes back to diet first. Supplements are designed to supplement a healthy diet, not to be used as a replacement. So I hope that sort of has given you something to think about. Please, if your diet's not where it should be right now, again, just start small. Just just start by one day at a week. Dedicate one day where you know that you can have that homemade food that you've made yourself, or even one meal. Just start small. Gradually reducing the reliance on the processed foods, because it will make a huge difference to your health and well-being. Now I know I've had a few comments come through, and where was I? Costas, I know you said something, but I think I might have lost your comment there. Costas, I can see that you wrote something. I'm just going to refresh my computer and see if I can actually see your comment, because I can't always see everyone's comments that they put here. Let me just scroll down a little bit. Costas says, you always make sense. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that has made a little bit of sense to you, Costas. I'm sorry if sometimes I know I get a little bit technical, but I'm a bit mindful. I know that there's people in this group that are, have science background as well, but I know that there are others that don't. So I'm trying to kind of keep it into easy to read kind of language. The difficulty of eating tasteless food and its time-consuming preparation just makes it impossible for most of us. Okay, your comment, Costas, about tasteless food, can I say, is that the processed food contains a lot of sugar, a lot of added sugar, and a lot of salt to help it taste better for you. But if your diet is always reliant on a lot of these processed foods that you think taste better because they're high in sugar and they're high in salt, and look, that's what the manufacturing companies do. Like the big food companies, they know that they need to make it palatable for you, and the more because the more palatable it is for you, then with the sugar and the salt, the more you're going to eat of it, you want to go back for more, it makes you buy more. So it becomes this vicious trap. But over time, when you gradually change your foods back to the more whole, wholesome foods, Costas, your taste buds actually change. And I say that it does actually happen. And I'll use the sugar as an example. For those of you who are struggling with sugar cravings, one of the best ways to help with sugar cravings is to eat more bitter food, so or more sort of leafy greens or green foods, because they tend to have a bitter taste. And so if you're having more of it, when you go to actually have something sweet, it tastes awful. It tastes really sickly sweet. But if you gradually increase your diet of more of your green, green leafy vegetables, or just green foods in general, from vegetables and fruits, it actually helps to stop those food cravings, that cravings for sugar, which we know shift workers are prone to, but it helps to kind of stop it in its tracks. And the more of the to do that, and will actually help to put the sugar cravings at bay. But the ultra pro, I know it's funny that you say the difficulty of eating tasteless food. I find that funny. And if I may just quickly share a story, I remember many moons ago, oh my God, it's over 20 years ago, I went down to a health retreat here in Queensland, and it was a week health retreat that actually might have been 10 days. Of course, magical food, magical, beautiful, whole foods, vegetables. Just if you can imagine, walking into this room where there's just this amazing amount of food. And I remember this guy here who was quite a prominent. He ran his own business, big company, but he was overweight, he was unwell, that's why he was there. But he actually, on the first night there, he said to the general manager, he said, "How on earth do you expect us to eat this food? Like, it's tasteless." Okay, so exactly what you said, Costas. You said it was tasteless. And he's saying the same thing, that all of these whole food, healthy foods is tasteless, right? 3 days later, actually no, it could have even been 2.5 or whatever, 2 to 3 days later, he put up his hand and said, "I'm going to retract that statement. This food that you've presented for us here is amazing. It tastes beautiful." So there you go. So after he changed his diet for 2 to 3 days, having more whole foods, real foods, cooked from scratch, with limited salt and sugar and processed foods, his taste buds changed. So he started to enjoy the taste of all of this healthy food. So there you go. It can be done. So yeah, it's not so much, sad. Oh, you're saying sad. Just telling you as it is. When I sort of hear people that say that healthy food doesn't taste well, it's because usually that your diet has just been swimming in a lot of highly and refined processed foods, which the food manufacturers, right? The food manufacturers don't care about your health in general. They just want you to buy their stuff. It comes down to profits for them, not your health. So of course, they're going to put all these added stuff. It's the same with low fat. Like, for those of you who are please following a low fat diet, I hope please don't keep following that anymore. That was based on old, very outdated, inaccurate science. The brain needs healthy fats. Our bodies, every cell in our body needs healthy fats. And fats don't make us get fat, but I'll save that for another training. We need to be having these types of, lost my train of thought there where I was going anyway, so we need to have healthy fats in order for us to be able to our brains to be able to function. But that was based on, this low fat kind of revolution that we were told that we should be having, everything should be low fat, low fat, low fat. What happened there, in order to make low fats palatable or tasty, food manufacturers added in salt and sugar. So there goes your health, like everything, it's not so much the natural sugars from our environment that is causing our ill health, like from fruits and stuff. It's the added sugars, it's the processed sugars that are added into the foods, the hidden stuff that we don't normally see. Again, comes in, the bottles of packaged stuff and things like that. So low fat's not healthy. It's because they try to make it tastier by adding all of the sugars and fat, salt and stuff. So having more stuff that's in its original form, full fat, milks and yogurts and stuff like that. It's going to be more filling, and so you're less likely to want to it fills you up. And that's the other thing that shift workers need, isn't it? We need to, because we experience these blood sugar crashes where we get hungry and we eat something and then a few hours later we're starving and hungry, and a lot of that has to do with this lack of sleep. But when we are continually eating those types of foods, the sugar kind of foods, it fills us up for only about an hour, and after an hour we're looking for the coffee and the donuts and muffins and things like that. We need to be having more whole real foods to keep us feeling fuller for longer. Again, it's not, of course that's going to help with your weight as well, but as I've just shared, it's going to help with your mental well-being, it's going to help with your gut health and your sleep and everything like that. So John said, would be happy to explore a new healthy diet, but I'm challenged by other family members who are not interested in eating the same things. Yeah, it's going to be tough, John. Very difficult to get support, and especially time to create two different types of meals. So often finding myself, I eat what the family eat. It's pretty hard if it is not just yourself you have to look after at mealtime. 100% agree, Jonathan. That just, it's a completely different dynamics, isn't it? It certainly makes it a lot more challenging if they're not on board with you. I suppose my only, for something like that would be maybe just to sit down and have a good heart-to-heart chat with your whole family kind of members, because shift work is not something that you can sort of manage on your own anyway. Like, shift workers, we're kind of like, we need our own little family to kind of come together, but this includes other shift workers, but it also includes our real life families as well. And Jonathan, I would just seriously sit down with them and just say, look, I'm concerned about my health and well-being. I'm facing a lot of challenges just from working shift work, and I know that this type of food is not helping me. So is it possible that maybe even, a couple of days a week, we can look at having more foods that you want to eat, Jonathan, that is going to serve you and serve your health, but it's also going to serve your family members as well. I think it's too easy for us just to fall into the trap of, and I'm not discounting what you're saying, Jonathan. It is so valid, and I know that it probably applies to maybe 90% of people watching right now. It's the other people around us that influence our decisions and our choices and what we're eating. But you do have 100% control really over what goes into your mouth. But it's finding your way to do this, and it's not about completely wiping out your whole week. Just start small. Maybe sitting down with your family, you say just one day that we can sit down and maybe have something that I want to eat, that I know that it's going to nourish me on a cellular level, and it's going to be great for your family as well. I think, the harsh reality is we are living in a society that is a global obesity epidemic. It is also a global type 2 diabetes epidemic. Sleep deprivation epidemic as well. Would you believe they've finally recognised that world Western society, we're in this sleep deprivation epidemic. We've got to do something to change it. We can't keep just sticking our head in the sand and not doing anything about it, because that one meal that you sit down to that's unhealthy, that's not what's gonna have that effect. Like, that's no big deal. But if it's day after day, week after week, years after years, that's when it's going to have that impact on your health. And the thing is, it is way easier to prevent a chronic health condition than it is once you've got one. It's a lot harder to turn it around. That's the harsh reality. I'm not saying it's impossible, it certainly is, but it's a lot easier to prevent, which is what I'm all about through this education and so much on prevention, by creating this awareness so everyone can then go back and think about it and make different choices. But you've just got to find a way. And nothing worthwhile is usually easy. That's the harsh reality. It's just finding a way in your environment. But really good question, Jonathan. Thank you for putting it forward, because I think a lot of people probably watching this are going to be thinking the same thing. Costas has come back in saying, it's sad that in the end it's time and maybe even laziness that makes us choose the fastest solutions. I think most of us will excuse it like it is, as you mentioned, very often, of course. not sure what the answer is to this. Maybe a picture of an angry Audra over our kitchen table. Oh, that's hilarious. That's funny. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, okay. So imagine me sitting on your shoulder, Costas. Next time you sit down to that double, triple cheeseburger or those donuts, imagine if I'm sitting there on your shoulder in your lunchroom or whatever, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching you eat that. You know, would I be happy? No. But your poor gut and your poor brain and your poor sleep is going to be affected from it as well. And I agree that I guess laziness is, souvlaki. Oh, okay, or souvlakia. Is that how you pronounce it? Souvlakia. Yeah, or even that too. I know, but that is tasty. That stuff I know. But yeah, we could say lazy, but I don't really want to say anything too harsh like that, because as I say, I know that there's people out there we've got a lot going on, and our lives are so busy, so increasingly busy, and we've got a lot going on. But you've got to find a way. Honestly, guys, your health is worth it. If you don't start investing financially on your health now by buying the better food, taking care of your health, it is going to end up being extremely more expensive later down the track, and possibly not reversible. So we can either do what's uncomfortable by making the effort, or sitting down at that kitchen table with our family and friends or whatever, and just look, hey guys, can we, or even for night shift, maybe for those of you who are prone to the wrong word, but when you're going to work, and people have put all these cheesecakes and lollies and everything on the table to eat during night shift, and it's done in good jest, I know that. But maybe maybe just start by saying, okay, can we have like one healthy day, one healthy night shift day, where people maybe bring in little bits and pieces, like different types of dips, like Costas, I don't use an example, because a Mediterranean diet has been shown in a lot of science as to be extremely really healthy. So maybe bringing in like a night shift platter of sorts, so everyone can bring in like a different type of dip, a different hummus or baba ganoush, or different beetroot dips, or other different types of vegetables on the platter. Like if everyone brings in something little that's healthy, so that's sitting in on the lunchroom to graze on, instead of the cheesecake, instead of the lollies, at least you're making a start. And the platters are great, I think, to sit down, and vegetable based dips and everything, your olives, they are so good for us. They're so filling, so we're less likely to kind of want to eat more of them. And for those of you who don't mind a bit of dairy, a little bit of cheeses and stuff like that, just a little bit on that plate. Those types of foods are going to nourish you, are going to provide you with those vitamins and minerals I was talking about, that are going to help to keep you alive, to help with all these biochemical reactions that are essential in helping us stay healthy. So I think one day a week is doable, Jonathan. That's whether that's at home for you, or Costas, whether that's in your workplace, and anybody else that's going to join and watch this. I think it's a great place to start, and your health will start to improve. That's too hard to try and do dramatic changes, I get that, but if you start small, you'll start to feel better, and you go, okay, I think I can keep doing this, I can keep going, and you will probably, highly likely, take a step backwards and have a day where everything falls apart, and it happens, like you have a crap shift and things will just fall apart, and you just want to go home and probably eat the whole fridge, and I'm not recommending that, but I'm just saying, don't beat yourself up when you have those moments where your eating may not be the great, but if it's the most of the time, then that's a good thing. So yeah. Anyway, I've been going, oh my gosh, I've been talking for almost an hour now. So I don't know if I've got any more questions or anything here. I know that I've seen quite a few kind of jump on and off. So thank you so much for joining me. I know I've been talking for quite a while. Thanks for the questions that you've put forward. Really good things to think about, actually. But yeah, I just hope that this podcast, it's not a podcast, is it? I'm coming on as a Facebook Live. I hope this just gives you something to think about. And because we know we're meant to be eating healthy, but a lot of us don't. So I'm coming at it from a different angle as to why we need to be not having these processed foods, because it's detrimental on our health. And for shift workers, we've already got a lot of struggles ahead of us because of the disruption to our sleep-wake cycle. So it's hard enough as it is, but we need to. We can't keep eating this highly refined and processed diet. We can't keep sticking our head in the sand and just pushing through it and pretending that nothing's going to happen. I mean, the human body is very resilient, and it will put up with a lot of that food, but it'll catch up with you. It always does, for most people anyway. Costa says, thanks, Audra. Night shift gone. Keep saving us. I can't save you, Costas. Only you can save you. Save is probably a big word as well. I don't know if it's really that, but it's just providing you with the education and some insights to think about. At the end of the day, everything's going to come back to you guys. I can't make you eat certain foods. I can't make you exercise. I can't make you do any of this stuff. Only you can do that. And if you're not doing that, that's when you need to have a sit down and start writing down things that are perhaps causing you to not do those things, and make those different choices and behaviours, and then start addressing them, finding out a way. Become more solution based. When a problem arises, put that solution cap on and find a way that you can solve the problem, so it doesn't become a problem later on. All right, on that note, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so very much for joining me, everyone, and for those, for Jonathan and Costas, and anybody else that I've seen here. I did have Cami, I think you were here for as well, and I saw a few other names. So thank you so much for all of you who have actually joined me on the live, and for those of you who catch me on the replay, please type 2 below. I know that you've watched it. It just gives me a bit of an idea for time. I hope you found it valuable, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, wherever it is, even if you are working. All right, okay, bye.